So for those who just joined us, welcome to IPSA's Process Manufacturing, Recreational Vehicles and Laboratory Operations. And I'd now like to go ahead and introduce you to Keith Monaghan, who will introduce the session to you. Thank you, Keith. If you'd like to unmute yourself, over to you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Keith Monaghan, and I am the chair of the Process Manufacturing, Recreational Vehicle and Lab Ops IRC. People refer to the PMRVL IRC. Sometimes we call it the alphabet IRC because we're so diverse. In the spirit of reconciliation, IPSA Manufacturing acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to the land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and extend the respect to all Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders peoples today. I'd like to welcome all the participants to this meeting, including the Chair of IPSA, Mr. Graham Russell, and my fellow IRC members. And thanks for making the time for this very important occasion. This is the second series of webinars being hosted by IPSA Manufacturing on behalf of its industry reference committees to further conversation around what skills are required and how to ensure they are made available to Australian industries and its workforce in the light of the government's 6 national policies in this area. In total, IPSA will be running 6 of these webinars, which hopefully will provide a strong level of insight and feedback across the manufacturing section to be combined into a report that can be forwarded to the ministerial level in the governments. So the main feel is they understand what industry needs going forward. It is known that Australia needs a strong manufacturing workforce and a strong skilled manufacturing workforce across the key industries, especially those focused around these 6 national manufacturing policy areas. In acknowledgement to this, we will need a skilled, highly skilled workforce, and what we hope to come together here is to develop some strategic plans in developing that workforce going forward. We have seen with the COVID-19 situation how we've had to rethink our priorities, and the governments have had to rethink their priorities, and this has been highlighted by their 6 national manufacturing policies. The aim of this series of workshops is to put forward a plan looking forward in the short term, medium term and long term. And we've brought together a number of people from various industries that are covered by our IRC, and our main feed is to get information from industry and the supporters of industry on what they feel is necessary for the future of these manufacturing organisations, manufacturing areas within Australia. I think we can talk about various interactions, customers and that, but I think the critical thing is we need to understand what is needed by industry and what training is needed by industries to meet these coming potential opportunities and get us out of some of the problems we're in. There is a 3-minute video from the Senator Honourable Priscilla Cash, and she's the Minister for Environment, Skills, Small and Family Businesses. So I think if we can jump into that, that would be great.
As the Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, I'm delighted to be part of this webinar series. I'd like to thank IBSA Group for their leadership in bringing together so many people across diverse industry networks. The Morrison government recognises the role of the manufacturing sector to the future prosperity of the Australian economy, and these events are a great way to provide relevant and practical feedback and advice back to government so that we can ensure the best possible outcomes for industry. The modern manufacturing strategy is a central plank of the Morrison government's agenda to fast-track Australia's economic recovery and secure future jobs and growth. Of course, an important element of delivering modern manufacturing in Australia is having the right sort of skilled workers across all 6 national manufacturing priorities. Our vocational education and training system is critical to the national economy and ensuring Australia's future prosperity. We need to support people to get the skills that will help us rebuild. And our role as a government is to get the policy settings right to ensure that those in the workforce have the opportunity to upskill and reskill. We know you need a strong, responsive and adaptable training system that can meet the needs of learners and employers. This is particularly important for the manufacturing industry, with a large percentage of your workforce gaining their skills through vocational education and training courses. And that's why the Morrison government is investing around $7 billion this year alone in the VET system, the biggest investment on record. You, as businesses and industry, have already told us that you need a pipeline of skilled workers to support our economic recovery. And that's why we announced a $1.2 billion investment to help create 100,000 new apprenticeships through the Boosting Apprenticeships Commencement Wage Subsidy. It's also why we established our $1 billion Job Trainer Fund, which will provide over 300,000 additional free or low-cost training places in sectors of demand. We also established the National Skills Commission to provide a new source of intelligence on Australia's labour market, workforce changes and current and emerging skills needs. That is the key, areas of skills needs. In other words, a focus on training in areas of anticipated employment growth like modern manufacturing. The Morrison government will continue to do all that it can to support Australian manufacturing, with a focus on getting more Australians trained with the right skills to drive this important industry. This is going to be a skills-led recovery, and your engagement with events like this IBSA webinar series are a key part of getting it right. I thank you for your support and dedication to grow and modernise the manufacturing sector, and I really hope that your discussions are productive. Enjoy the webinar.
Right, there was some interesting comments in that area, and one of the things is the amount of money that the federal government has put aside for developing skills, especially in the 6 areas. We are very prime in that area. Our diverse IRC covers a lot of training in that area. I think the critical thing in this is going forward that we must look at developing training situations that meet the industry requirements for the future. And this includes upskilling and the changes that are happening within the industry and in the industrial areas. Everyone hears about Industry 4.0, and even though there are major difference and variety of takes on it, it still is the digitisation. And so what we need to do here today is look at how we can ensure that our training packages that we are developing is suitable for industry and industry going forward over the next 2, 5 and 10 years. One of the aims of today is to come forward with some sort of plan, if possible, to present to government in that area. So I'll just get through my notes. Apologise for this. Yeah. Okay. So we have. I think we're in a position where we can break out to our various areas to discuss what industry needs. I believe there's a housekeeping slide that will go.
There's a poll first there, Keith, if that's all right.
Okay. Yeah, no, go for it.
Great, thank you very much. So just about to open the poll, as mentioned earlier, there are 3 questions here. So please make sure you answer each one. And you do need to scroll down on the right-hand side to actually come up with all those options there. So going ahead and opening that poll now. Thank you, everybody. And once you've answered those 3, just click that submit at the very bottom. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Still a few more minutes. If you can just make sure you've chosen all 3 and then click that submit button. Thank you very much. I can see we still have quite a few people participating and a few who haven't started. If you go ahead, that would be wonderful. Thank you. All right. Robert, I'll be back with you shortly. I'm just trying to wait till we close the poll out, and then we'll be with you. Thank you. So still 8 people, if you could make sure. Mandy, could you check in with Robert, please? There's still 6 people who just need to click that submit button. That would be wonderful. Thank you. All right. Last 3, if you could just click those, that would be great. Thank you very much. The sooner you obviously pop that in, the quicker we can close it down. So 4 more people there. Well, great to see a few more people are participating. Thank you for that. If you could just close it out, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much. Those 2 who are in there. 1 last person. Just click that submit. And I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Thanks, everybody. All right, I'm popping the results up there now. Can you see the results there, Keith? On the right-hand side, and you can scroll down. So for question number 1, have you identified any opportunities for your business or industry as part of the value chains supporting the 6 modern manufacturing strategy priority areas? It looks like the majority of people seem to be between 1 and 2. Is that what you would have expected, Keith?
Yes, yes, for the majority of industry, yes. There'll be a few that are a little bit more advanced and be chasing other areas, but 1 and 2 is probably, bearing in mind, especially coming out of COVID, where industry has been battling to survive, their focus has been very much targeted in certain areas, and this has probably not been the priority. So that's expected.
All right. And so for the second question, which is what do you see as the most significant change as to how work will be organized over the next 5 years? Majority of people had adoption of new environments, new and emerging technologies was their highest one, and then increased demand for workers with specialist skills. Is that what you're expecting there?
Yeah, if you look at the way industry's going, and you can see that there's new emerging adoption of emerging technologies, and as you put in place those emerging technologies, you're going to have the skill sets to work with those.
Right. Thank you for that. And the final one, to what extent will workforce skill development be critical for your business success? The majority of people had said great extent. So I think that's probably what you were expecting there, were you, Keith?
Yes, yeah, very much so.
Great. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for popping those in there. All right. I think we're going to move out to the breakout groups now. So what we will do is we will actually allocate you to the breakout groups, and you will get a pop-up on your screen which says join. Now when it says join, it will tell you which group you have gone into, when you've gone into laboratory, recreational, polymers, or process manufacturing. So if that is not the group that you want to be in, please click on the later option versus the join option. That will keep you back in the main plenary session, and then we'll be able to allocate you to the session that you would like to be allocated to. All right, so going ahead now, the breakouts. Nick, can I just check how long the breakouts are for again this time? Is it for 30 minutes, 35 minutes?
35.
Great, thanks very much, Nick. Appreciate that. All right, going ahead and starting the breakout groups now.
Right, let me get the run sheet so I know where I am after facilitating that rather interesting discussion around polymers. So welcome back, everyone, and I'd like to thank the facilitators, Leah, Stuart, and Nigel, for the work they've done in facilitating the breakouts. And I'd like to briefly hear some of the insights that came from those breakouts. So can we start with Leah? Sorry for throwing you in the deep end first, Leah.
No problem, Keith. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Excellent, excellent. So just a few key take-homes from our session. One was that around the increased focus on the resourcing and minerals sector, we're starting to see that it's putting an increased demand on graduates for construction materials testing. It's already putting pressure on the other industries because they're stealing away their graduates into the resource sector. So that was a really interesting take home. We're also seeing an increase in the requirements and expectations of the skills required to work in education laboratories. This is possibly, we need to explore it a little bit more, but this possibly is due to the increased focus on STEM in our schools. And of course, we're also seeing an increased adoption of automation and technology that is becoming more and more focused. And particularly in the pathology sector, we're seeing an increase in the requirements for molecular biology skills, and that's more and more becoming apparent as part of the COVID-19 pandemic for molecular microbiology skills. And I think that's it. Thanks, Keith.
Sorry, Keith, I've muted you in between, just so you kept the next note. You can just unmute yourself. Thanks.
Okay.
Keith.
Sorry, yeah, I didn't realise I went back on mute. Stuart, can you give me a summary of your breakout?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. The RV industry is going to be heavily impacted from regulation, certainly over the next year that's going to come in, and that's going to flow through in terms of what skills are going to be required moving forward. We're a huge importer of supply chain components, and so with the current Australia-China trade war, certainly there are opportunities to on supply chain components, and so it's important we look in terms of what those opportunities present. Certainly we need some critical thinking, we need some design skills, we need a mix of technical and some soft skills around diagnostics, project management, conflict management, dealing with mental health as well. Certainly we're seeing the emerging technologies, both in terms of the way that our products are manufactured and serviced, but also the particular components that go in. And we're also a taker of or heavily reliant upon our tow vehicle, which in many cases is now being imported and is subject to other conditions around waste management, lighter products, new emissions and what have you. We also have a massive issue in relation to RV doesn't seem to stand on its own 2 feet, and we've been a bit of an importer from other packages, and so we're also reliant at that point in time in terms of any prereqs that come in through and flow through into the RV sector. So it'll be important that when we do a review of our RV qualifications that we take a serious look in relation to how those training packages and those units are imported and how they interact to make sure that the training qualifications are actually specific to our industry, but still provide a hybrid of skills which allow transportability through our sector. And I guess the only other thing is the need for ongoing skills development. That's something as an industry, we're very committed to, but it's a bit of chicken and egg at the moment, particularly when the RV sector, it doesn't fit naturally within one of those 6 priority areas for modern manufacturing. So I think it's probably us, Keith.
Thanks, Stuart. Very good. Nigel, how'd you go with process manufacturing?
Nigel had a better offer, Keith, so it's Phil Clark here.
Oh, Phil, you did. What, you got a better offer than me? I'm upset now.
No, he did have to go. He led the conversation for about half of it, and then I took over. Look, we had a good discussion in a small group. I just put some of the sort of more interesting comments. One was discussion around the age of the workforce and the fact that at times like this is a time when you tend to lose people, and it's extremely difficult to get them back, particularly if they, are about using an inappropriate term, towards the end of their working life. And that has a whole set of ramifications. Supply chains are placed under a lot of pressure as there's a shortage of skilled people. We had some interesting comment from non-destructive testing industry of the fact that in the COVID period there had been a lot more need to do remote testing. People couldn't move around, couldn't move into workplaces and so on. That's provided some benefits and some improvements, but also raised some issues as to exactly how they do their work and their regulatory arrangements and so on. There was quite a lot of discussion in this group about funding, and particularly the problem of low and no enrolment programs, where RTOs couldn't get viable courses together, and that was particularly influenced by some state government funding decisions. But again, in terms of that's critical in terms of the fact that for the sectors to move forward, they are actually going to have to find ways of getting more formal training arrangements in place. There's also some comment that in terms of the existing qualifications, that in fact there was a desire to broaden out into some more core skills of leadership, of tech change, and so on, as part of the move into a sort of new operating environment. CNC was another one that was picked up, particularly as an area of skills in that whole shift to Industry 4.0. There was discussion about access to capital and the fact that it was difficult in an environment where some firms were able to change because they had access to grants and so on, whereas others didn't, and therefore were left in a fairly difficult position. So we got lots of quite interesting discussion. There's some talk about sustainability and the need to around recycling. That came more through on the chat than in the actual comments. But overall, Keith, I thought we got some fairly interesting insights from the group as to what's happening here and the sort of directions things will need to go.
Well, that's good. Thanks for that, Nigel, Phil, and whoever else was there. In the polymers one, we had some interesting discussions. One of the things that does always come up with polymers, especially these days, is recycling and the training that needed to be done around that. So going forward, people understand to be able to design and use the right materials and such for recycling. The other area was increasing new tech and going from semi-automation and understanding that to automation situations. One of the big problems, and I think this would cover most manufacturing industries, is it has a bad reputation, and the drivers of training, the mothers out there, don't like their children to go into manufacturing. And I think we've got to overcome. The other area that we did, there was a bit of discussion around, and we got more to it as we started looking at going forward into the future, is having training systems to be able to react quickly and meet the needs of industry going forward as technologies change in those areas. I made an example is we're looking at doing a training package for Industry 4.0, but at this current system and the way the current system works, Industry 5.0 will be running before we get Industry 4.0 training package up and running. So I think that is, we in the polymer area think that's fairly critical to be able to react to industry's needs, because that is changing very quickly, and it's been driven not only by overseas influence on product pricing, but the needs around recycling and the problems around problematic waste where polymers are concerned. The other area was, again, labour shortage, the COVID situation, immigration, not being able to backfill the labour situation, and the ability to train labour so that they are job ready, so they can walk fairly quickly into a level in the industry and then progress from there. So that was basically it in a summary. So I'd like to thank everyone for participating. We've had a large number of people here today, and it was really, really good to see. And thank you everyone for being involved, and it was great. Where do we go from here? That's a very good question. The results and answers for this webinar will be put together into a report that will be presented to governments, and IPSA will, with the support of the IRCs, will be forwarding this report to the government and trying to drive change that way. Does anyone from IPSA want to make a comment about that, please? Sharon, I thought Sharon was there, or Phil, or Antoinette. So I put them on the spot.
It's Phil here, Keith. So, yes, just where things will go to now is through this week, each of the IRCs is hosting one of these events, and we would expect both a summary of each of the meetings to be produced, plus a report which we would look to put to industry leaders in the first instance to test their reaction and response to it, and we're hoping to involve national bodies and significant companies in that. But as Michaela Cash has alluded to in her video, and certainly at the webinar she did with us a few weeks ago, this is really an exercise which ultimately will end up with government, and we look to influence policy and programs. So we're working at the moment with the Department of Industry and the team there working on the modern manufacturing statement, and this is being used by them, both the poll data and the survey data, plus the comments that we're picking up from people and recording, will feed into their process as they develop the industry roadmaps. So there's a sort of a push into government to inform ministers in government, but also within the departments in Canberra who are responsible for implementing the modern manufacturing statement. So that's where it's all heading, Keith, and I really do appreciate the input that people have made today. It is very rich insights from people who are working on the ground, and that's extremely valuable, I think, to improve the way we do this.
Great, thanks, Phil. Okay, I think that about wraps everything up today. I'd like to thank everyone for being involved. I know it's an hour and a bit out of your busy schedules, but without meetings like this, we can't endeavour to progress the training packages in our areas. So, again, thank you very much, everyone.
Can I stress to everybody, please fill in the survey because that'll be used. So we've done the poll, but there's also a survey coming as well.
Okay, you heard that. So if you could do that, that'd be very much appreciated. Again, thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Bye now.
Thank you very much. I'm just popping that survey link in the chat box there. If everybody could go ahead and complete the survey, that would be wonderful. So click on that link, and then you can all exit the session from now. So thanks, everybody. Really appreciate your participation today. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Phil. Thanks, everybody.